Haha! Hi there, I'm Artie, and it's Halloween, my favourite holiday. I mean, scary movies, a spooky atmosphere, and an excuse to knock on people's doors to ask for free stuff. What more could you possibly want? Anyway, to celebrate Halloween, I thought I'd share with you some of the times where I've been most terrified in my life, and oddly enough, they were mostly at theme parks. So, welcome, one and all, to a video I like to call Artie B is a huge wuss. Alright, so this is a few months back, and I was at this theme park that, not gonna lie, it was pretty crap. It was a pretty small place, but somehow had some of the longest queues I've ever been in. And I'm British. It also had some of the most truly mediocre rides ever, and just generally felt like a glorified travelling fair. Actually, I'm going off script here, but there was this one ride there. This wasn't scary, but I went on, and the ride operating system crashed, and so I was sat there for like half an hour waiting for them to boot up like the ride operating system computer thing again, which I'm like 90% sure was running on Windows XP or something. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. Anyway, so overall, yeah, it was a pretty forgetful experience, barring one thing. You see, in the back of this park is one of those spooky maze things, you know, the ones where you walk around and actors in clown costumes jump out at you. So I decided to brave this thing. In the queue, I was absolutely terrified. I kept seeing people run out of the exit, you know, looking very shaken. And actually, I'm pretty sure I saw one group of kids run out screaming at the top of their lungs. So, as I got closer to the entrance, I began seeing this weird-looking clown dude start coming out the door and beckoning people in, which really wasn't helping with my sense of dread. Finally, about 10 minutes later, I entered the building and was greeted by a freaky nurse lady, aforementioned clown dude, and some guy in a top hat. Trust me, it was a lot scarier than it sounds. So, I'm in this room, which, by the way, is stylized after the reception area of an abandoned loony bin, and this woman is pacing around me while the other two guys stand at the side near the entrance to the actual maze. She does this for a solid minute, then strolls on up to my right ear and, get this, screams at the top of her lungs into it. Suffice it to say, my eardrum was basically gone, and I was out of there ASAP. Yeah, that's right, I never even entered the actual maze, just walked out the front door. Honestly, I do sometimes think about what it could have been like inside the maze, as I can't find any walkthroughs online. But I think I would have actually just peed my pants if I'd gone in. Now, this one happened like years ago, so I'll cut myself a little slack for being such a wimp. So there was this seaside fairground place that I used to go to quite often, and I was always fine on all of the rides except one, the ghost train. Now, I'd been on every other ride there at least once, and the ghost train, which very creatively was its actual name, was the only one I'd yet to go on. So me and a friend decided to brave it and hop on. I remember a whopping 3 elements of that ride. The outside, which had a giant demon animatronic thing holding up the ghost train sign, a skeleton in a barrel with glowing eyes at the ride entrance, and one animatronic guy inside that was lying on a table or something. The reason I can only remember 3 things, I had my eyes closed tightly for the entire thing, barring like 2 seconds where I saw the dude on the table. From memory, my friend was actually perfectly fine, and watching a video I found online, the ride is, drumroll please, it's not scary at all. Any threat whatsoever is completely taken away because all the scary things are in giant cages. Apparently, this theme park wasn't allowed to just have them exposed or anything, probably because there was so little space and the animatronics were so close to the ride track. There was no story in this ride either, it was literally just a bunch of spooky statues with mixed styles and glowing eyes that occasionally moved in a dark room with a car in it. And finally, we've arrived at the elusive thing I mentioned in the title, Disneyland. But to keep up viewer retention and maybe get this video to 8 minutes long, I'm going to first talk about the other time I got terrified. Yeah, there were two. So I actually don't remember this one awfully clearly. In fact, I had to get my parents to explain to me what happened. Literally the only thing I remember from it is this weird, I don't know, I guess you could call it like a vision I get every so often, whether that be in a dream or just a random thing I remember. So this happened on the Disneyland Railroad at Disneyland, California. If you're not familiar, it was just a normal train circuit that brings you around the park, up to a certain point at least. You see, nearing the end of the track, the train brings you into a diorama of the Grand Canyon, complete with wildlife and some goofy music I'm not allowed to play here for copyright reasons. Now, once you get through this Grand Canyon diorama, you enter a prehistoric version of it, and this is the bit that utterly terrified me for no reason in particular. Surrounding the train carriage are now massive dinosaur animatronics, and I was apparently crapping myself at the sight of them. According to my parents, I was covering my eyes and crying for the duration of the ride. As I mentioned earlier, I sometimes catch vague glimpses of the ride from my memory, but they're not entirely accurate. I sometimes imagine a huge empty room with waterfalls at the side and giant dinos lining the walls. I was right about the dinosaurs, but that's about it. Honestly, the memory I get is much scarier than the real thing. But it's now time for the main event, the time I got jump scared at Disneyland, and honestly, it's a lot less interesting than it might sound. This was on the same trip to Disneyland as the dinosaur thing, but this time my parents and I were going to check out the centerpiece of the park, Sleeping Beauty's castle. They had the fireworks show, and after watching that, we entered the castle for the walkthrough. Allow me to reenact what happened. We were removed from the walkthrough.